Ian, can you speak a little bit? Just say something in French, maybe? That could be nice.
Unfortunately, my French is terrible, but it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I look forward to answering your
I'm
questions
sure
and
it's
sharing some
not.
information.
It's not. I'm sure it's pretty good. Perfect. Okay, it seems perfect for the people here. So just a quick reminder, it's going to be only in English. So I'm not going to translate for the French people who are following me. So I'm sorry for that, but we're going to speak about it a little bit later. So stay with us, hang out with us, and I hope you're going to enjoy the stream and the interview with Jan. It's a great pleasure to have you here, Jan, tonight. I hope you're doing well.
I am. It's a pleasure.
And I
to be
really
with
hope
you.
the questions are going to be good and have some answers from you.
That's the hope. That's the plan.
Okay, are we ready? Are we ready?
I am ready.
Okay, he's ready. So first questions that I have tonight. Can we have some more precisions about covenant abilities and Soulbinds, like where and when we'll be able to use them or not? Can you precise that or not yet?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
I think these are a core part of your character.
Okay.
Once you join a covenant, you'll have access to those abilities. Once you hit max level and you form a soulbind, you'll draw upon those powers everywhere you go. So raids, dungeons, PvP. I mean, I think we view World of Warcraft as a holistic game,
Okay.
and the identity of your character is something we want to be able to express in all situations.
Okay, pretty interesting. So you're gonna balance that to not have like many problems maybe regarding PvP or PvE or whatever.
I mean, we as always, we have the ability to have custom PvP balance for certain effects. Things can be specifically scaled down or up in PvP if they're too strong or too weak there. But really the last resort for us is to completely disable something, because
Okay.
your character feels like it's a combination of these abilities and skills, and if one of them suddenly stops working because you start fighting another player, that can feel pretty bad.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, good. Good to know. Second question. Could covenants become maybe new PvP factions? By that I mean, do you think we could see something like you choose a covenant and it becomes like a faction, like PvP wise?
I don't think it's likely that we're going to replace Horde and Alliance with these Shadowlands specific factions, because I think part of it is the covenants aren't directly enemies with each other. They have different philosophies. They each serve different functions within the Shadowlands as a whole.
Okay.
I know occasionally they can come into conflict, and of course we have the potential to do some fun little mini games or activities if it makes sense. But I wouldn't read too much into that. Like we might have some PvP world quests, like we did back in Legion, that are more free for all PvP. Maybe in one of those areas it's Covenant versus Covenant, or maybe we might have a battleground or a brawl later on in the expansion
Okay.
that highlights Covenant versus Covenant play.
Okay.
But I would view that more as just fun activities and not
Okay.
a storytelling change.
Okay, good. Good to know. Okay, another question, a little bit more tricky, maybe this one. So you are probably aware of the problems regarding some items in and PvP in BFA. Like by that I mean like traits, essences, mostly
Yes.
trinkets, of course, and corruptions. What system can we expect addressing those specific problems in Shadowlands?
Yeah, so I think certainly part of the story of BFA has been introducing new systems, and the community has rightly criticized this as systems layered on top of systems. And the reality is, it's not an ideal situation. Things like essences, things like corruption, were added to provide outlets for progression and character customization,
Mhm.
to address problems with the underlying systems in BFA, like Azerite armor and the Heart of Azeroth.
Yep.
And like the compounding effect of all these things can lead to some pretty broken situations. It's also just a lot of complexity. It's too many different currencies, too many different things that are modifying your character. So we definitely look to take a large step back from that in Shadowlands. We've also learned something, I think, pretty important from tuning mistakes made with regard to systems like some corruptions or some essences, where passive damage, if I'm just doing my rotation and pushing my abilities and something procs and puts a dot on the target or does damage that's not really reflecting my skill or my decisions, those probably shouldn't be the most powerful options
Yeah.
in the hands of a skilled player, as compared to things that are increasing your stats or that are magnifying your own rotational choices. And so when we see something like Gushing Wounds or Twilight Devastation being the number one source of damage for players, that's not a great place for things to end up. Whereas when severe or masterful corruptions in the hands of a skilled player are the best choices, at least there it's driven more by player action and skill and feels like it's emphasizing your choices
Yeah.
rather than reducing their value.
Okay, good. Pretty interesting. I like that. Okay, another question. Will there be new cosmetic challenges in Shadowlands? For example, I have in mind like the Mage Tower in Legion. So are you going to implement something like this maybe in Shadowlands?
So down the line, later on in Shadowlands, there's room for all sorts of additions. The Mage Tower, as you may recall, was something that came halfway through Legion. But we do have a number of unique cosmetic rewards that are tied to specific activities, whether that is going deep into Torghast, into the twisting corridors, endless mode of Torghast, or Covenant-specific features like the Path of Ascension within Bastion, which is a little bit like the Mage Tower in terms of being, a series of solo trials that
Mhm.
you can overcome through your own skill and
Yeah.
mastery. And there are cosmetic rewards unique to that Covenant that await for players who can complete the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. And this is a little bit linked to the previous questions. Question, have you ever considered bringing specific rewards for a player competing at higher ratings? For example, in PvP or doing higher mythic pluses? Because nowadays, being like a 3K rating player in PvP or doing a plus 29 doesn't really change anything except maybe having a bigger ego, I guess.
Well, a bigger ego is a little bit of a reward in itself.
It is,
I
it
think,
is. I
frankly,
agree.
I say that as a joke, but the people who are doing plus 29s, a lot of players around the WoW community know their names. And there's a Reddit thread
Sure.
discussing the fact that they just did the first, 29 freehold or whatever in time. And they're the same people who are having a chance to compete in things like the Mythic Dungeon international competition, or on the PvP side, those are the same people who are competing in tournaments. We're hesitant to push a formal in-game reward structure too high. Now, I think we have, in rating, for example, the top 100 guilds on each faction can get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
In Mythic Plus, if you're doing all 15s in time, you are getting, unique recognition and rewards for that. And that's a bar that we draw at, the top 1% or fraction of 1% of players, because we're confident that that is a balanced system, that all classes can achieve 15s. Really, all classes can do 20s in time in Mythic Plus.
Yeah,
All
probably.
classes can get to 2400 rating and earn Gladiator. At the very, very, very highest end of the system, as we see in things like the MDI or the very highest key pushing, we admit that the game isn't perfectly balanced. There are some specs, there are some classes that will be able to do those completely extreme achievements when pushed to their very limit. And when we formalize rewards around that, it can put extra pressure and expectations around everyone feeling like they can access those things. I
Okay,
think people
I
who
see.
are climbing to the top of the leaderboards are often doing it out of that challenge, out of that sense of competition with their peers who are also trying to break records. And that's, I think, a fun scene that the community has driven that works in and of itself. And we risk actually messing it up if we start putting in-game rewards associated with it.
Okay, I see what you mean. I don't totally agree, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Okay, another question. Okay, it's maybe an easy one. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you call PvP power?
Yes, the PvP power item.
Let's go.
So that was an internal experiment that got
Okay.
data mined. We have no plans to return to a PvP specific stat.
Okay.
I think, but we were trying different ways of having items scale in PvP or having spells scale in PvP. At the end of the day, we want our systems to have a certain amount of clarity to players where they understand what items are best or what skills or spells are going to perform best in PvP. But there's a lot of extra complexity and gear management that comes with the old system we moved away from, where you need an entirely separate set of gear just for PvP. And even though we considered it for a while as we were reintroducing PvP vendors and looking back at some past systems, we've decided that PvP only stats are not the right thing for the game right now.
Okay. Okay, good. Another question, a little bit out of the game itself. As we don't have any BlizzCon this year, will there be something special for the Shadowlands release, like online or something, maybe an event or something like this?
It's a good question.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
it's a bit
Thank you.
premature to say. I think we are all right now learning as we go and figuring this out. I think originally, I mean, the stream yesterday and a lot of these interviews that you see happening, we'd originally planned months ago to have an in-person summit where we could invite people out and talk to them out in Southern California and show these things in person. Of course, that's not possible right now. So we're trying to do as much of it
Yeah,
as we
sure.
can virtually. Who knows what the situation will be like this fall? And I think we definitely want to find a way to connect with our community and celebrate as much as possible. So we'll definitely be talking about things internally, but I don't know anything for sure right now.
Okay, good. Another question that I have here. Yeah, like me, there are probably a lot of people who do more than just one content to the game. Like, for example, PvE, PvP, whatever. And want to be, like I would say, meta doing it, if you see what I mean. So,
Hmm.
could you give us a hint of how hard it is going to be to change Covenant's abilities? Like, like more than just like it's not going to be long or it's not going to be that hard?
Well, okay, so covenants are set up to be a different sort of choice than your spec or your talents. And I think WoW is really it's a set of choices. I think the great Sid Meier, who made Civilization and other great games, has described games as a set of interesting choices, a set of interesting decisions. And WoW is, and your gameplay in WoW is a series of those. Everything from the tiny ones, like what button are you going to press next? Which ability are you going to use next in this encounter? To a step up from that, what gear are you going to equip before you go into the boss fight or start the dungeon? What
Yep.
spec are you? What talent in the row are you picking? And all the way up at the other end of the spectrum to things that are permanent, like what class are you? What faction are you? And covenants are something that we see more towards that latter end of the spectrum as part of your identity. Now, within the covenant, there's a ton of customization within the Soulbind system and conduits. You'll have 3 separate Soulbinds and the ability to say, okay, this Soulbind has traits that are really good for AoE damage that seem to be focused on AoE damage. I'm going to put conduits that are also great for dungeon gameplay in this path. When I want to go run a dungeon, I'm going to switch to this Soulbind with these conduits active and feel like I'm optimal within that space for the dungeon. Or this other Soulbind, I'm going to use Nadia, who we showed yesterday in the stream,
Yep.
who has some single target oriented traits. And I'm going to put some single target conduits there. And when I'm doing a patchwork type raid boss that's heavy single target, I'll pick that one. And like my talents, I'm optimizing myself for that situation. But when it comes to the Covenant as a whole, that is a package of many, many options that's closer to a subclass than to simply a talent row or a talent choice. And that's how we're viewing it. So when it comes to switching Covenants, we want to make sure that if you regret your choice, if you want to experience something different, that's not hard to do. That's not hard to change. You can just leave the covenant that you first joined, join the other one. They will welcome you with open arms. We have a lot of catch-up mechanisms to quickly get you caught up so that you can be fully functional there. But if you want to return to a covenant that you've abandoned, you will need to do a quest to prove yourself, to kind of make up for breaking your oath to them. And in practice, that's going to mean that covenants aren't something that you can switch back and forth between freely, between one boss to the next, or doing Mythic Plus versus PvP. But our job and our goal is to make it a package of options that include utility, different powers, strengths, and weaknesses, so that there truly isn't one clear answer for a broad type of content. I think the best example I can give, and I actually read a good thread on Reddit discussing this a couple days ago, if someone asks you right now, which is better, mage or hunter? What should I play? Honestly, both are really good. You can
They
ask people
are.
who are top Mythic Plus players, top raiders. It's really going to come down to which is more fun. Maybe which one does your raid group need, or which one does your friends need more,
Does it
but
really
which
though?
do you prefer, and go. And that's what we want covenants to feel like.
Okay. Okay, I would say nice dodging skills, Gion, but that's fine. That's fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Okay, easy question. Will there be new arenas or battlegrounds in Shadowlands?
We definitely have a new arena coming that's set in Bastion that uses the architecture there. It's this bright, glowing, resplendent floating platform in the skies of Bastion. Really excited to let people jump in and fight in that environment. We don't have a battleground planned for Shadowlands at launch, but new battlegrounds is something we're always looking to explore and add where they make sense.
Okay, good. Excellent. Another question here. It is probably the most difficult word I have to say tonight. So, be cool with it. Are tertiary stats? Tertiary? Is that the word? Tertiary stats?
It is, yes.
It is? Great. So are tertiary stats going to be less impactful in Shadowlands? Like avoidance, leech, speed, or whatever?
Do you think they should be less impactful?
I don't know, honestly. That's a question from the community. So I guess it's important for them to know.
Okay. I mean, I think probably not. Probably about how they have been. I think that we talk about item RNG and we talk about socketing, Titan forging. Those are things we've gotten rid of because they often felt like you needed those things for the item to be viable, to be worth using over your other items.
Yep.
Whereas stuff like avoidance and speed tends to feel more like a genuine perk. Like you're not going to wear a lower eye level item just because it has a little bit of speed on it at the expense of a lot of stats.
Yep.
And so it's a little bit of RNG, but I think we think it adds a little bit of flavor and texture without removing choice or adding too much frustration. If people feel otherwise, I'm definitely curious to hear those perspectives.
No, I can agree with you on this one, honestly. Okay, that's how do you call that? A tricky question? Not maybe tricky, but a little bit picky question right now. So a problem that we have been having for a long time now. Obviously, you know it. This is lag during outdoor PvP battles. So one mode is cool. One mode is pretty fun. But, playing a PowerPoint sometimes is not. So will you be addressing this problem in Shadowlands? Maybe like some new servers, I don't know, like that we can do some great PvP battles outdoor?
So this is something that we've been dealing with throughout the history of World of Warcraft. Remember when Wintergrasp first came out and Wrath of the Lich King, it would drag down entire servers, and you knew when Wintergrasp was happening because your spells would take 4 seconds to cast. Yeah. It's an ongoing struggle. We've actually put a lot of focus on this internally in the past year and a half. I hear I see the memes in the community all the time of cheap Warcraft devs don't want to spend money on servers. We have if there are better servers out there than the ones we have, I'm not aware of them. Our server team isn't aware of them. We're using the best enterprise technology that's available to host our game. In fact, the servers are many, many times more powerful than what we ran the game on years ago. The biggest challenge is the game is more complicated and there are inherent mathematical computational problems. I think Preach actually had a good video kind of hypothesizing what the cause of some of these problems was, and he wasn't too far off the mark. We found, going back to WoW Classic, we can support way more players in combat using the same servers, a lot of the same underlying technology, because the pace of combat was much slower and there were fewer different effects going on. Yeah, sure. A mage might cast a fireball, and it's like a 3-second cast, and you cast a fireball. Today, people have much more haste, different effects going off, 7 different procs that are being triggered every time you push a button. And the key thing is that all that information has to be computed on the server and fanned out to all the other players who are present. In computing, there's the concept of computational complexity and how that scales. And there's what's called an n squared or n cubed problem, where if you have one player fighting another player, the server just has to tell the other player what's going on. If there's 10 players fighting 10 other players, then every time one player pushes a button or their procs go off or their pet does something, the server has to tell everyone else around all of that information to update their clients. And so now you have 10 people telling 10 other people information. That's 100 times more messages from 10 times more people. And so at some point when you have 40v40, 50v50, the server struggled to keep up. That's by way of explanation, not excuse. It feels terrible. There's no question, it's miserable. And we have been working on as many optimizations as we can come up with to improve the player experience and to let those epic battles happen. That's one of the coolest things in an MMO, right? I remember seeing, I haven't seen one in a while, but there were groups that organized these massive pre-made Alterac valleys of 40 paladins versus 40 Death Knights, and you'd see them all marching in, and wouldn't it be amazing if that could just play out at full speed and you could see those battles instead of the server lagging? So we want it as much as you. It's something we're actively working on. There's just some mathematical laws that we're running into that make it hard, but we want to keep improving.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. You told us yesterday that we could expect the game to be released this fall. The question is, what about the pre-patch, though?
So yeah, I think the pre-patch, as usual, will probably come a few weeks before Shadowlands officially launches. We'll have all the systems available, so the level squish will be in place. All those other changes will be present, and then usually about a couple of weeks before Shadowlands comes out, we have a pre-patch event. This time around, it's sort of loosely inspired by the Scourge invasion from Wrath of the Lich King, as we have seen the Helm of Domination shattered, and that means that the undead across Azeroth are now rampaging across our lands. And alongside that, we're going to start telling the story of how the heroes of Azeroth are gathering their forces in Northrend, in Icecrown, and preparing for a frontal all-out assault on the forces of the Jailer at the top of Icecrown that's going to lead us into Shadowlands when the expansion formally begins.
Okay. I think I received the message about the fact that we are done for today. I have so many more questions, but I guess this is it for today. So like how someone would say, dude, there it is. There it is. Thank you, Jon, for your time. It was a great pleasure to have you here tonight. I hope the questions were good enough for you, and not too picky. And I wish
not
you
at all.
a great day.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you again. Thank you again for having us tonight, and have a great day. Bye-bye, Jon.
Thank you. You too. Have a good night.
Thank you.